Hi, everybody. Karen Schaal here, and welcome to the Karen Schaal podcast, where we expand the mind and grow the heart. This is our second podcast in our 5-part awareness series. So if you are finding this information useful, please hit the subscribe button. Today, we are talking about how to practice awareness without overthinking it. We all say we want to be more present, but yet we keep going back to our old patterns. What's happening there? Why does it always seem to be one step forward and 2 steps back? That's where this episode comes in. We are going to talk about how to practice effective and transformational awareness. Awareness that when we're consistent, will change our lives. I want to make this very clear. Awareness is not something you have to go to some far-off mystical place to discover. It doesn't require a silent retreat or 5 journals or a candlelit meditation room, although that's all nice stuff and effective. The reality is, it starts right here with ordinary moments. We've talked about this: walking the dog, scrolling on your phone, drinking coffee, feeding your kids, your cat, yourself. All of these daily routines don't have to be distractions from awareness. They can actually be where awareness can take root. Yes, you can have your Zen moment washing your face. And what I'm talking about here is functional awareness. This is a concept often used in movement-based practices like dance to describe paying attention while you are in action. It means using the real moments of your day, the ones already happening, as your classroom. You don't need to add anything. You are building attention into what you're already doing. It's the practice of noticing without interrupting your life. All you need to do is pay attention. And when you do that, when you start weaving awareness into your everyday moments, something subtle yet very powerful begins to happen. You become more curious about how you're showing up in the world. You become more interested in what is actually happening in your life. And not just during the big events, the traumas, and the celebrations, but in those in-between spaces that make up most of your day. Remember when we talked about behavioral scientist Anne Graybiel's observations that 40% of our day is unconscious? When we begin to practice functional awareness, a lot of that 40% is going to be chipped away at, and that's going to make a huge difference in how you see yourself and how you experience the world around you. We've already talked about behavioral anchoring, attaching a moment of awareness to something you already do. So if you've been listening, you know how effective it can be to use moments like turning on the shower, checking your phone, opening your laptop, locking your door, pouring your morning drink. In behavioral anchoring, these are cues to pause, notice, and reconnect with yourself. That practice is still at the heart of what we're doing. Because what we're really talking about here is creating little pockets of noticing, moments where you check in, not check out. Now, you might be thinking, my life is already full. I'm overwhelmed, stretched thin, living by default, just trying to get through the day. I get it. You can't even imagine adding one more thing to your plate. That's exactly why functional awareness is so powerful. It doesn't require you to stop what you're doing. It doesn't demand extra time or new routines. It simply requires a willingness and a desire for self-knowledge, for balance, for a better way of moving through your day. And because of that, it's available to anyone, no matter your schedule, no matter your stress level. No excuses, no shortcuts, just small, steady choices that start to shape a different way of being. One of the simplest and most effective ways to grow awareness is to focus on just one aspect of your day. I kind of consider this an awareness hack because you're taking all the craziness the world is throwing at you, everything happening in your busy lives, and bringing it all down to focus on one small portion of your life, just one single thread. You might decide today I'm going to pay attention to how I move. How am I walking? What's my posture saying? Do I rush from place to place without breathing? Am I fidgeting? Or maybe today I'm going to notice my tone of voice. Am I sounding friendly? Am I speaking clearly or mumbling? Does my voice have an edge to it? Am I sounding tense or welcoming? Other days you might tune into your thoughts or emotional patterns. I often follow my thoughts when I'm around others. I ask myself, am I judging? Can I still my thoughts to truly listen? Am I daydreaming when I should be present? The key isn't to analyze or fix. It's simply to observe. Just the act of watching with curiosity. And check this out. This kind of awareness builds self-trust, which is really important. You want to be able to trust yourself, because when you consistently pay attention to your own life, even in small ways, you start to show up for yourself. You learn to recognize patterns, understand your reactions, and start to respond rather than react. You begin to believe your choices matter and that you're capable of change. There was a woman who started practicing what Deepak Chopra calls witnessing awareness. This is when you basically become a third-party observer to your own life. The woman had decided to pay closer attention to how she spoke. For years, people had told her that she sounded sarcastic and unkind, but she had always brushed it off. She thought they were too sensitive, that it was their problem, not hers. But when she started to actually listen to herself, not from inside her own defensiveness, but like an observer standing next to her, she could hear it. The sarcasm wasn't clever. The words were cutting, and they stung, and they were pushing people away. And it was painful to her, but it was also a gift, because through awareness, she could finally hear it. And thanks to the self-compassion she had developed through her brilliant practice, she didn't spiral into shame. She used her awareness as a turning point. She slowly began changing how she spoke, how she related to people, and how she related to herself. And it changed her life. And you can imagine how it changed her relationships. I like to look at the witnessing awareness as a kind of experiment. It's like spying on yourself. Not to find yourself doing something wrong, but to simply check out what you're doing. You start to see the futility of some of your habits. You see where something is working well for you. That's a plus. You get curious. You might even get amused. I know I do. I mean, sometimes I catch myself doing something that's clearly an old pattern, and I just have to laugh. Seriously? We're still doing this? So I really recommend witnessing awareness. It's not something you can do all the time. Just choose an event, a moment, and try it out. The next awareness tool goes back centuries. In Christian tradition, especially Ignatian spirituality, it's called the examination of conscience. The idea is at the end of the day, you quietly review your actions, your thoughts, and decisions you made during the day. Fast forward a few hundred years, and what do we find? Positive psychology, the scientific study of human flourishing, offering something strikingly familiar. So instead of the examination of conscience, we have Dr. Martin Seligman's What Went Well. And the cool thing is that modern research shows this type of self-examination builds optimism, boosts well-being, and even reduces depressive symptoms over time. 16th century Ignatius knew what he was doing. Pretty cool. But in reality, why wouldn't you want to evaluate your day? Workers get performance reviews, projects get evaluated. If you're sincerely invested in your personal development, doesn't it make sense to check in with yourself? You get to see where you nailed it, where things went well, where you want to tweak something or try again. The highs, the lows, the middle-of-the-road moments, all of it matters. It gives you data, insight, feedback, and it builds something even more powerful. personal integrity. There's actually a whole body of research behind personal integrity. It's called self-determination theory, developed by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. And it says that we all have 3 core needs: to feel autonomous, like we're choosing our own path; to feel competent, like we're capable and effective; and to feel connected, like we belong. That's why integrity isn't just a moral idea. It's a psychological necessity. It builds mental clarity, emotional resilience, and a sense of inner peace. And research shows when you live in that kind of alignment, when you don't just feel better, you function better. When your actions line up with your values, and by values I mean the principles and beliefs that guide how you want to live, you're actually meeting all 3 of those needs. When you regularly reflect with honesty and kindness, you become more aware of where you're living in alignment and where you're not. You start holding yourself accountable, not out of guilt, but out of desire, out of care. You stop operating on autopilot and start making choices that feel true to who you are and who you want to become. That's integrity in motion, and it's how you stop living by default. But what happens when awareness meets action? When we stop noticing and begin choosing differently, moment by moment. This is when you begin to realize that every moment of awareness is a choice point, a small but powerful invitation to decide. Do I keep doing what I've always done, or do I try something new? This is where the transformation really begins, not in the noticing alone, but in what comes next. Let's say you've become aware that you speak too harshly when stressed, or that you check out emotionally during hard conversations, or maybe you've noticed how tightly you hold your shoulders all day. The next step isn't perfection. It's never perfection. It's not about fixing everything. It's about gently choosing a new response. You soften your tone. You drop your shoulders. You pause before reacting. You take a breath before answering. These are subtle shifts, but they build something bigger. And we mentioned this earlier, self-trust. I used to think the idea of trusting yourself was kind of funny. Like, what do you mean, trust myself? I'm literally with me all the time. I know what I'm up to. I know I lock the door when I leave the house most of the time. But that's not really what self-trust means. What I've come to realize is that self-trust isn't about knowing what you did. It's about being able to count on who you are and who you're becoming. Can I trust myself to show up, to make a better choice than I did yesterday, to pause before I react, to mind the gap, even when my buttons are pushed? Can I trust myself to speak honestly, but with kindness? This is where it gets real. And here's the kicker. When I wasn't paying attention, when I was just reacting, performing, pleasing, defending, I actually couldn't trust myself because I wasn't really there. I was operating on autopilot, and I had no idea sometimes how I was going to react. The first time I realized that, it hit me hard. I can't trust myself. If I couldn't trust myself, who could I trust? And then slowly through awareness, reflection, and to be honest, a lot of cringy moments, I started showing up, not perfectly, but consistently. I started noticing what I was doing. I started choosing differently. And that's when my authentic self-trust started to take root. It wasn't dramatic. It rarely is. And then one day I realized I didn't second guess myself so much. I didn't need to run my choices through 10 other people before deciding. I had my back. And I have to tell you, that was a powerful feeling. There was a quiet confidence that I was paying attention, that I was beginning to get it, and I felt safe. When you begin to give yourself the opportunity to straighten your life out, when personal integrity becomes your inner compass, when you begin to act in a way that's honest, consistent, and true to your deeper values, And when your behavior reflects that inner truth, even in small ways, you feel more grounded, more confident, and more capable. This is moving into the fullness of who you were meant to be. Integrity means you're not split between who you are and who you pretend to be. You're becoming one integrated, authentic version of yourself. And that's what real peace feels like. This is where your power resides, when you are unified with yourself. This is when your personal brilliance can really flourish and thrive. This is a lot of stuff. So let's do a recap. We talked about awareness and that it doesn't have to be some mystical event. It's a daily practice available in the ordinary moments of your life. Functional awareness means paying attention while you're doing what you're already doing. That seems doable, right? You don't need to stop your life to become more aware. Behavioral anchoring helps you attach awareness to cues like opening a door, starting your car, taking a sip of coffee. One of my morning anchors is drinking water from my glass with the glass bead at the base. Chopra's witnessing awareness, the ability to observe yourself, your thoughts, behaviors, and tone with kindness and curiosity. The daily review, we had two great examples of this, the Ignatius examination of conscience and Seligman's what went well. This is an examination at the end of the day where you can reflect on how your day went. And this can be done at any time of the day. If you have a lunch break and want to go over how your day is going so far, go for it. And finally, the deep dive into one small portion of your life, choosing one thing to observe like posture, tone, or thought patterns. And hey, no pressure to master all of this at once. Pick out something that resonates with you today and just do it. Trust the process. Trust yourself. This has been a full episode, everybody. Thanks so much for staying with me. My hope is that your mind has attached itself to one small action toward awareness that you are willing to carry forward. If so, please share with us in the comments. That would be great. And please, if you found this useful, share it with someone who you think may benefit. We all need to become more aware. And I think this information contributes to us reaching that goal. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I think that's how we can get this out to more people. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. Keep showing up. Keep paying attention. Remember, your brilliance is real, and it's continuing to grow and unfold one choice at a time. Until next time, bye-bye.